Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Consummate Athlete Podcast. I'm Molly Herford. I write about all things fitness and outdoors related, and I recently just raced a bike for the first time in years and years and years.
Has it been years? I mean, you've raced Xterra.
Yes, I've raced triathlon, but there's a difference between racing triathlon and starting a road race. I haven't done road racing, as my dad pointed out, for at least 7 years.
Really?
Yes, and since he doesn't listen to this podcast, I can say it took him a solid 15 minutes on the phone debating with himself when the last time I raced road was.
I don't know if the podcast would have helped.
He's very invested.
In the podcast?
No, in my racing bikes.
Very good.
Anyway.
Well, I'm Peter Glassford, and I'm Molly's co-host. Here on the Consummate Athlete Podcast, I am a registered kinesiologist and endurance coach.
Also raced bikes this weekend.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd call it that, but I actually got points, and technically I should have got money, but my teammate Soren did not pick up my money. So she owes me 65 Canadian dollars.
So that'll buy us nothing in the U.S.
They're going to mail it to me, but I mean, our postage is so expensive, it's really going to be a break-even situation.
You're going to owe them money by the end. Anyway, we did not race at the same race this weekend. I was down in Vermont at Killington for the Killington stage race.
And there was a few listeners down there, I hear.
I was going to say.
They heard the race nerves
We actually
episode.
Upset, people listening. I apologize again for that.
We didn't have a lot of quick fix solutions, so if you were on the way to the race, I don't think any of the sleeping lots or training for those critical moments might not help. But
yeah, I heard from a couple of you that you had to turn it off midway through because you couldn't handle hearing all of the race day nerve stuff that close to race day. So apologies, and I hope your races went really well. It was cool talking to so many people. I've realized that I think now more Canadians know me than Americans from New England, which is kind of a little weird for me. I'm not gonna lie.
Why were all the people Canadian?
No. There were some American listeners too.
There you go.
But there were a lot of Ontario really represented at Killington, so it was cool seeing a lot of people.
Yeah, it's a big race. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I raced a bike. It went pretty well. I'm not going to say it went amazingly, but I didn't embarrass myself. I didn't embarrass my lovely Bike Ride Share Coffee team. And Shred Girls is one of the sponsors for our team. Shocking, I know. And we have the logo right on the back of the skin suit and on the back of the bib short. So every time I was pedaling away, even on like the hardest climbs, if I had one of my teammates in front of me, I could look and see the Shred Girls logo just right there, and it made me smile every time, no matter how steep the hill was. And they were steep. Have I mentioned this? Have I mentioned they were steep?
I assume that's how you race bikes. You go up hills. Is there any news on the Shred Girls front?
Not quite yet, but we should have a release date pretty soon. But in the meantime, the website is chugging along. If you want to get a bunch of tips and tricks from some rad real-life Shred Girls on BMX, mountain bike, road, cross, gravel, pretty much everything under the sun.
And that's shred-girls.com.
Yep.
And Shred Girls is a book that is coming out in 2019.
Yes, book series. Book 1 is coming out in 2019.
With some new animations. There's some animations in it.
Illustrations.
We're going to call them. They move, maybe, if you move the book.
Pretty sweet, yeah.
They're holograms.
Yeah.
But it's for young ladies is sort of the target, but it could be for anyone. Mm-hmm. But young adult fiction, I guess, would be the category.
I think Babysitter's Club, but with bikes instead of babysitting.
Yeah, so you can read about it more on the site.
Yeah.
What else is going on? We got bike skill sessions. We're building here towards the summer of some clinics and lots of one-on-ones and stuff, which is, I think I enjoy one-on-ones. You get to know people and sort of progress them more. This morning I was out with a young lady who's sort of aspiring towards elite racing, but she's sort of in the expert category, and so we went from no bunny hops to, not quite a bunny hop, but like hopping pretty big logs, right? Which is really, the external goal is really to hop over things, so the rest will come with speed and practice. Mm-hmm. But yeah.
But this episode and this weekend are not about bike racing.
Well, given that our podcast is not supposed to be all about bike racing,
that's probably a good thing. So today's episode is actually with our good friend Eric Batty and talking all about hiking, camping, setting fastest known times.
Yeah, really our focus was on camping, right? Like I think this year I say as much to him in the episode, last year I was all about swimming as sort of that keystone movement or sort of foundational movement that lets you do a lot of cool stuff. You can do surfing, you can do, whatever you want to do, go down rivers or, and just feel confident. You don't have to be a great swimmer to surf, but if you're very confident in the water, then I'm sure it's more enjoyable. Mm-hmm. And then this camping, like not car camping, but like real camping in the wilderness, I feel like really enables people such as Eric to do some really cool things. He crossed Algonquin, which is a big provincial park here in the winter, so they crossed it because it was frozen. There's lots of lakes and stuff, right? So they were on skis, snowshoes, and I guess on foot would have been the third one as well. So they did that just in the dead of winter, super cold, camping outside in the winter, which is I still can't see myself doing that, but good on them.
I can't see us doing that either.
But yeah, Eric's a very accomplished athlete, certainly a consummate athlete. He will basically do whatever you want to do, but he's a great photographer. We'll link to his Instagram.
Yeah, it's at Eric Batty.
And ericbatty.com as well. We'll get you to his photos and all that links too. But yeah, really good photographer. He raced bikes with me. That's sort of how we grew up together and raced together on the same team for a lot. But then he went on and he did the 24-hour World Championships of OCR, just sort of not off the couch. He trained quite hard for it, but working a job and then also sort of just coming into that sport.
If you're curious about OCR, you should actually go back to, one of our earliest episodes.
And Lindsay?
Yeah, with world champion Ryan Atkins, who was on the team with Eric, and then his wife, Lindsay.
Yeah, so they did the OCR Championships, trying to set the 100 miles, which is sort of a long story. I don't know if Ryan talks about that in it. So I think they do. They basically did it as far as their side of the story goes, and but apparently it was actually supposed to be like 100. It was whether it was laps or the distance they were going for, and there's some sort of controversy and they didn't get the big payout that particular year. But they did win, which was good. All that to say, Eric is very much the consummate athlete, mm-hmm. and today he is basically going to take us through sort of the key things you need to know if you're going to go on sort of a camping trip or, bike packing or anything that's going to involve sort of being out in the wilderness a little longer than a day and a little further away from your home in your car, right? So a lot of those comforts of home.
Mm-hmm. And hopefully in a little over 24 hours, we will actually get to put some of this to the test.
Well, that's it. We're going to listen to this. This is not what I'm suggesting you do, but then we're going to go out into the wilderness and try and day hike the Killarney Trail. So we'll see.
2-day hike.
So that might be the topic of next week's podcast is how that all went.
Yeah.
If you don't hear from us,
send help.
You know where we are.
Yes, everyone knows now. That said, the weather forecast is looking a little spotty, and as we are new campers, we are gonna elect to be smarter rather than tougher.
I think we'll do some sort of camping.
Yes.
Whether it's local or just up there for a day or something like that, but. Yeah, hopefully we'll have something to report. We might not do a whole podcast if we don't actually do the trail, though, because part of the thing is to actually finish this loop trail, which we'll tell you about more hopefully next week.
All right, let's get into this because we've got some packing to do.
What would you do as far as just basic gear and stuff? Like if you're going to go, for 2 or even 3 days into the backcountry,
Okay. Cool. So are you starting now, or are you going to give me like a rolling? Or?
No, I'm definitely we're going to start right now. So, I can welcome you to the podcast, Eric Batty, Adventurer Supreme. Would you like to provide the people with your fastest known times or any other sort of palmares?
No, I'm good without that.
Okay, well, I'll look those up and I'll let them know. And I'll let them know about your photog websites and that sort of good stuff. But needless to say, you have done a lot of cool stuff, ranging from I guess the 24-hour sort of what do we call this obstacle course racing. You've obviously raced a bike really well. You've run around the Killarney Trail with me, and then again a few times. So, and then I guess just recently you did this backcountry or across Algonquin. You crossed Algonquin in the wintertime.
Yeah. So it was me and 2 other people, Ryan Atkins and Buck Miller, and we mostly skied and snowshoed part of it, but mostly on skis, about 165 kilometers diagonally across Algonquin Park in February of 2018. And we did it over the course of 11 days. and it was one of the coolest and most fun experiences I've had in the wilderness. So yeah, it was super cool. It was neat to be out in Algonquin, which is, you know, Canada's oldest provincial park, which turns 125 years old this year, and to be out there in winter where we had the place literally to ourselves was super surreal. And you know, we're only a few hours from Toronto, right, which is it's the biggest city in Canada, and we're in one of the largest expanses of wilderness in southern Canada, right? So it was really neat to be that close to the city, yet super, super remote. So it was fun.
And it seems to me, you know, you've improved your skills over time and accumulated new ones, you know, rock climbing or whatever. But it seems to me like, you know, camping, if we can just sort of group camping as its own skill, seems to be like, it's sort of like an entry point, right? Like once you can camp and take care of yourself in the wilderness, you know, it opens up, you know, you can go in the winter and snowshoe across Algonquin, or you could, you know, do a lot of these things that, you know, are sort of inaccessible if you don't understand that.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. There's definitely like basic skills that any outdoor adventurer or explorer or backpacker or whatever, there's a basic skill set that everybody should have. And that's, you know, it's always, you know, it's like to start low and slow, or, you know, start close to home, and then you build on that, right? So you want to lay a good foundation with a skill set and then build upon that, right?
Right. So we've camped in our van a lot. So how are we doing as far as now going into the wilderness?
Yeah, well, car camping's a start, right? It's not the same, but when you have to carry everything on your back to be self-sufficient, you know, you're balancing what to bring versus carrying too much, right? So over time, you know, you can figure out exactly the gear that works, what you need, and then what you don't, right? So once you start building on your skill set, then you can start paring your kit down, and you can start lightening everything up, and you can start doing more with less, right? So you're carrying less gear. The less you carry, the farther you can go, right? But just know that you got to have that skill set to get out of a jam or get out of, you know, a situation should that arise, right? So you don't want to jump in. You don't want to be somebody, you know, that's never been in the wilderness before, never camped, and then go do a 100-kilometer backpacking trail with a 15-pound pack, right? It's not something I would advise, right?
Right. So now when, you know, we're going and we are hiking, so we have quite big packs, and I'm ready to carry something.
Yep.
So I guess, what do you think as far as, you know, when you're thinking about a 2 or 3 day trip, like what's in a backpack? Like when you're talking about lightweight or things that you might not bring or want to bring, like, can you maybe take through sort of the main things? I mean, obviously there's going to be some variants, but like what are the critical things that you're going to put? Like what is going to make 30 pounds of a pack?
Yeah, so the main gear that you're going to need to take is, one, you need a shelter system, and most people start with your classic tent, right? And there's so many good tents and shelters and shelter systems out there that, you know, you could talk about that for hours on itself. But you need a good, reliable shelter system, something that if you're in the summertime, that can withstand, you know, heavy rain, downpour, higher winds, you know, summer thunderstorms, that kind of thing. You know, then you need your sleep system, right? So you need, you know, if you're going to be in the summertime, you know, often people take too warm of a sleeping bag, right? And a really warm sleeping bag, or a sleeping bag that's good to -9 degrees Celsius, you don't necessarily need when the nighttime temperatures are only going down to like 12 or 15 degrees Celsius, right? So that can take a few pounds right there, is just take an appropriate sleeping bag to the lowest temperature that you're going to be expecting, right? So sleep system and a sleep mat, and I have a bunch of different mats that I use, and most of the time for the summer I just use the closed cell foam mats, like the Thermarest V-Rest, just because they're light, they're durable. You know, you don't have to worry about patch kits or inflating them, and they're not as comfortable as an inflatable mat, but they're pretty comfortable, and you know, for the weight's sake and the price, they're really hard to beat. And then obviously your backpack, right? And, oftentimes people go with, the biggest backpack. You go to the gear store and people are trying to sell you on 90 and 100 liter backpacks. And in reality, if you're only going out for a few days in the wilderness, a 50 liter pack will probably suffice, right? So you have your backpack, and then so you have your backpack, your sleep system, your tent. Well, that's kind of your main big pieces of gear, and that's where if you start lightening your kit up, those are the ones that you can really, really gain or save weight, right? When you start getting lighter tents, lighter sleep bags, and lighter backpacks, right? Like I think I have one backpack. It's a 50 liter pack, and I think it weighs like 1.5 pounds, right? But it's only meant to carry a lighter load in that 15 to 25 pounds, right? If I'm out in the mountains for a week and I have to carry climbing gear and crevasse rescue gear and ice anchors and stuff, then I'm definitely going to be carrying everything in a bigger, heavier duty bag, right? So it's important to have the proper gear for what you're going to be doing, right? So if you're just going to be backpacking in Ontario, you don't need a big mountaineering backpack, right? And then the next kind of the main thing for me would be your water purification system, and that could be aqua tabs, or that could be a water pump, or whatever you choose. And most of the time, I usually use the aqua tabs. I have been finding when I'm doing long runs, or I'm really try to find something else that works a little bit better. And I have the UV light stick, and I've tried most things with that. Then next big one would be clothes, right? And generally I have a trail set of clothes, which in the summertime would be a pair of shorts, just a shirt, a pair of socks, and my trail running shoes. And then I have a set of camp clothes, and generally that's a pair of pants, maybe if it's spring or fall, a pair of long underwear, a fleece, maybe a very light down jacket, and a rain shell. And that's generally what I'll take for clothes. And I'll only usually have 2 pairs of socks. If I'm only out there for 2, 3, 4 days, I'll generally just have my trail socks and then my camp socks. And then if one pair should get wet, I'll just dry them out on the outside of my pack whenever I can, right? And then the next biggest thing for me, where a lot of weight can be saved, is, and I see it's kind of overkill here and there, is footwear. And oftentimes, if you're not only carrying 25 pounds on your back, you don't need a massive hiking boot with a 3/4 shank sole. Like you just don't need that, right? And they weigh like 5 pounds, right? And like for 99% of my backpacking, I use my trail runners, right? I find them, they're light, they're agile, they have good traction, they dry really well, and they're more affordable, right? And it's one of the things where it's not a static load, like something on your back that's not moving a lot. On your feet, if your boots are 5 pounds and my trail running shoes are only 1.5 pounds or a pound, that's a 3.5, 4 pound difference, and you're picking that up every step, right? So if you're picking up 3 or 4 pounds, every step will be half for each step, right? So that adds up, right? That's a lot of extra weight that you're picking up and energy you're just burning that you would save if you're just wearing a pair of trail runners.
Yeah, and that's what I was sort of thinking for this too, since we're on the shorter end, was maybe going more like the sort of Solomon trail runner.
Yep, and that's probably what I would do, right? They're my tried, tested, and true. Like for most backpacking, I use something like a Solomon Speed Cross or something similar. Like I have a few other pairs that I use too, but something like that has pretty good support, but it's lightweight, dries quick, good traction, and that's kind of my go-to for that.
All right. What about socks? I know that's sort of the critical thing, is the blisters and the getting wet feet and stuff. Any advice around socks?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not super picky with socks. I could have the nicest, fanciest socks out there, and I could get a blister, and I could have the junkiest, crappiest, oldest pair of socks in my drawer, and I won't get a blister from them. So I think socks, in the winter or when it's really cold out, maybe a merino wool or a merino wool blend. But generally, for me, my feet are generally fairly tough, and I don't usually have to worry about blisters. So I usually like to go with a thinner sock, like I said, like a light merino blend, something that is going to dry fairly quick. And it's just going to be a bit softer on the feet, right?
And maybe just having options or like replacements, right? If you do get wet feet or something's not working.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And if if it's really, really hot out, like if it's like crazy warm summer day or something like that, you're out in the sun, and, you're walking on the warm rock and your feet are going to get hot, then I might put some some trail toes, like foot butter or something like that, or anti-chafing cream on my feet. And I find that really helps a lot. That just cuts down on any friction. And if you can cut down on the friction, then you're going to minimize the blisters substantially, right?
Makes sense.
But yeah, and the big thing with the feet is try to keep them clean, right? And if you have lakes everywhere, if you have streams, if your feet start getting dirty and dusty, right? That all those little particles of sand and little bits of dirt and stuff, they're almost like sandpaper, right? So they get in your socks and they actually start to create more friction, right? And you get more friction, you get more heat, you get blisters, right? So if you could find a stream or something like that, to stop and have a break and wash your feet, and dust your socks out, it'll make a huge difference in the long run.
All right, and then while we're stopped at that stream, we're getting water. Is a stream, like a running stream, sort of the best spot to grab water if we're going to filter or if we're going to run the tabs? Or are you like more looking for like big lakes or?
Yeah, in Killarney in particular, you got to be careful with the running streams because, if you're up on the mountain ranges where the stream's coming from, right? So if it's just coming from a beaver pond up on top of the hill, that's great. It's moving water, but it's just moving water from a beaver pond, right? So, in Killarney, I would definitely treat like everything. I would not question or guess with any water in Killarney. And the time that you and I ran it, Peter, probably almost 10 years ago now, like I got giardia really, really, really bad because I didn't let the
because you're the weaker of the two of us. You got that, I think.
Because I am the weaker of the two. Well, I was not as patient. I was very thirsty, very, very thirsty, and you weren't as thirsty. And I figured 15 minutes was good enough for the tabs, and it proved me wrong. And I ended up 2 weeks later, the giardia hit me. Well, 10 days later, the giardia hit me. Now I was in bed for 3 weeks, lost like 20 or 25 pounds, and it was awful.
So now, like,
never do that again.
Yeah. So you think the tabs are really like, as long as you have clean looking water, like, you wouldn't do like physical filter and like a tab or something like that?
You could, yeah. If the water's super sketchy, yeah, double it up, right? If you're like filling up at some little mud beaver pond and you can see beavers swimming around in it, double it up. Like you could run a
that's a good indicator.
Run a filter. Yeah, run a filter through it, or run it through a filter, and then put a tab or two in, depending on what the specifications for whatever the manufacturer recommends.
Okay, let's move on to food. We want to be pretty light. I'm not even sure we necessarily want to bring a stove. Like we've both sort of come to terms that it's not going to be fancy. But do you have any, easy sort of maybe even non-cook sort of dinners for the first night? Maybe breakfast or something like that, or do you think you'd be better just to run it super light? Cliff Bars and powder or something.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of a light stove, and there's lots of good options out there. Like I like a warm breakfast and a warm dinner. Dinner especially. Like breakfast, I can get by with some bars or something, or some trail mix, or just some snack food. But dinner, I like the dinner in a bag. I think since I had my first dinner in a bag like 15 years ago, 20 years ago, it's improved so much, and they're actually like really good meals now. And there's no mess. All you do is boil your water and your pocket rocket or your jet boiler, whatever you're using. You add it to this this bag, and you let it sit for 15 minutes, stir it up, and you just with your your long spoon, you just eat it out of the bag, right? And there's no mess, very little waste. It's very clean, it's fast, and it's somewhat nutritious, right? Like they actually have like protein and fat, and there's like actual ingredients in the food. So that's what normally, like 98% of the time, that's what I do for dinner, is dinner in a bag. And for me, there's like backcountry pantry's got a lot of good options, and you got to find whatever, suits you and your taste. But I like the lasagna. I like, this is one of my favorites, lasagna. The pad thai is really good. And I guess there's the Alpenair, which is another company. Their mac and cheese is like probably my all-time favorite. It's unbelievable. And then so that's for dinner. For breakfast, generally I'll just do oatmeal. So I'll just either have a big bag of oatmeal with some brown sugar and some nuts and stuff in it that I just add water. And then I'll usually just do that for breakfast. And then throughout the day, it's just snack on the go. So I'll just be eating bars and some mix and maybe some beef jerky or, some crushed up Pringles or something. So.
Gotcha. It seems like a lot of people don't, I've talked to a couple others who have done it. It seems like not a lot of people are actually making fires. Is that like just because it's so difficult with finding enough wood and getting the fire actually going? Like why the stove versus, making a fire?
Well, yeah, the first thing you're going to want to do is see if there's any fire rules in place, right? So I know, like, or if there's any fire bans. If there's a fire ban, then it's just no fire, and it's not worth risking that. But for the most part, if there's no fire ban in place, it's mostly convenience, right? If you're going to do a 35 or 40K day on the trail, you're going to be getting to camp pretty close to dark, right? And by the time you set up your shelter, put your sleeping bag out, make your dinner, really the last thing on your mind is going to be fire, right? And especially for me, like I'm into photography. So, I get to camp, I get things set up, and then I'm going to go be looking for the nice sunset or the nice lighting, right? So fire's kind of like the last thing on my mind. If it's been raining or, it's shoulder season in the fall or something like that, and you need to dry some gear out or you're cold, then that's a different thing. But in the summertime, I don't know if I've ever actually just made a fire backpacking, right? Unless there's been a reason. And
then is your stove, like, it just has like sort of spark built into it, or are you just using like set of matches to just sort of light that flame off the tank? Or
Yep. So the stove I mostly use is my Jetboil, and it's like got a 1 liter titanium pot that goes on the top of it, and it's super efficient. Like or close to sea level here in Ontario, it boils a liter of water in like 3 minutes or 3.5 minutes or something. Like, it's crazy fast. And it all packs into itself. Like, it's got, the little canister that actually goes inside of it. The stove goes inside the pot. Like, it packs up super small, and it has a built-in flint, right? The built-in flint's good. Don't rely on it, because if that flint gets wet, then it's not going to spark, right? So you always want to have a backup, and whether that's just another, like a light my fire, like flint stick, or a match or a lighter or something else. You got to have, something else in place to light that stove, right?
Awesome. And then to hang food and toothpaste and that sort of stuff, are you using sort of just a normal waterproof bag, or is there anything special beyond, hoisting a rope up into the tree, or like, any advice on that sort of safety protocol?
Yeah, definitely hang your food. And so I use just a sill nylon stuff sack. It's a heavier duty one that takes the weight of all the food and anything that a bear might be attracted to. And there's a couple of different ways you can hang your food. It's probably the simplest is just to tie a light rope, like a paracord or a 3-4 mil line to a rock, throw it up and over a branch that's suitable, like, let's say 15, 20 feet high and, 10 feet out from the trunk of the tree, and then just hoist the food up and then just tie it off to the tree. And that's the easiest way to do it. There's 3 or 4 other different ways you can do it. And they're probably too hard to explain over headphones. If you just go on Google and just Google bear hanging options, there's a number of different ways you can do it. But the number one thing is you just want to have it high enough off the ground that a bear can't get to it, and far enough out the tree that a bear can't get to it. But you also want to make sure you don't have it too close to the limb that you're anchoring it off of, just because, one, bears can reach down from the limb and grab it, Two, I've also had one time years ago when I was in Algonquin, I had it about 2 feet below the limb, and a raccoon went down the rope and onto the bag, and then just ripped the hole in the side of the bag and just like demoed our whole week's worth of food, except for like only part of it. Like he literally got in the side of it and contaminated like everything. So we learned from that. We need more rope, more distance from the branch to the food.
Okay, I gotcha. So like more like hanging it really low versus giving them.
Yeah.
So it's less stable, and then it's going to sort of hopefully flip whatever's crawling down it off.
Exactly. Like it was only 1.5 feet or 2 feet below the limb. And so the raccoon just went down the rope. Right. And we were using a heavier rope then, because that was actually on a canoe trip. So we were using a heavier line, but backpacking, the rope I use is actually a 1.8 millimeter Dyneema line. And it's what we use. Like I'm an arborist, so it's what we use for throw line. So it's crazy strong, and it's super, super thin. Like it's less than 2 millimeters thick, and there's no way a raccoon's going down that rope.
Yeah, it sounds like almost like fishing line almost. Like 2 millimeters.
Kind of, yeah.
That's small.
It's pretty thin. Yeah, it's pretty thin, and that's probably the best stuff you could get. Like you can get that at any arborist supply store. Like I don't think any major outdoor stores carry that stuff. Mm-hmm. But it's something I've taken from my my arborist industry or arboriculture and brought it into backcountry.
Yeah. Okay. Bugs are my other question. Apparently we're in the height of bug season or getting into it. I mean, we'll be rational around weather, and then I think also bugs. Like if we get started and it's crappy, then we'll not go as deep. It's okay to turn around. But as far as preparing for that, would you do bug hats, bug shirts? Like what are our options here if we're trying to be like over prepared for that?
Yeah, bugs love me. Both black flies and mosquitoes, they love me. And I do, if it's in the height of bug season, I'll carry like a super light, like a no-see mesh hat or cover, at least for my head. And then that way I can keep them out of my hair and my ears and whatnot. And then for the rest of my body, while you're hiking, it's not usually too bad because Killarney's, there's lots of open ridges and stuff. And it's, there's usually a breeze coming off Georgian Bay. So, when you're moving, they're not going to be too bad. When you're stopped in camp, they're going to be horrific, and both the black flies, and then once the sun starts going down, the mosquitoes will come out, and they will eat you alive and carry you away. Right. But it all depends, right? If it's after black fly season, then they shouldn't be too bad, right? But if there's lots of water around and it's early in the season, then both black flies and mosquitoes won't be very good. Okay. Right. Well, and they'll, for me, like they test my patience. Right?
Well, you have lots of it, so it's good.
Oh, yeah.
Would you do anything as far as like chemicals, DEET and stuff? You got any opinions on that?
Yeah, the off of the DEET stuff. It's a love-hate relationship because you're putting chemicals on your body, which is not a good thing. But at the same time, it does work, right? So it keeps them. What I found is it keeps them from biting you. Or they still will, just where you haven't sprayed it. But they're still gonna aggravate you and kind of tick you off because they're always flying around you and like bumping into you and flying into your face and your arms and your neck, and they're still gonna be pestering you. They're just not going to be landing and biting, right? Gotcha. So, but it still works. Like if I'm going there in prime bug season, yeah, I'm probably going to be carrying some chemical as well.
I think even just as a plan C type thing, right? Probably makes sense. Like I don't know the last time I've ever even used it. Like it would be a long, long time ago. But at a certain point you get desperate, I get.
And that's it, right? If you start out and the bugs are not that bad, but halfway through the trip, you could, the weather could change or something happens or mosquitoes come out or, and it could turn south pretty quick, right? But I think I think it's one of those things. It's like, darned if you do, darned if you don't, right? Because you start Googling, you just get on the internet and Google, is DEET good for you? Or what happens when you put DEET, dip nylon in DEET, or polyester, or any, fabrics in DEET, and it just completely, dissolves it, so just know that if you're going to use it, that's what that stuff does, right, when you're putting it on your skin.
Fair enough. Well, I'll leave that to Molly. She's the one that uses the chemicals, so I'll assume that she can use it if she wants to. Okay. Is there anything that I haven't asked about? I think I've covered shelter, water, food. What are my other survival needs? I think those are, am I forgetting a major survival need? I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah. You want to have a little first aid kit.
Oh,
right?
That's what I was missing. Perfect. When it goes wrong.
Yeah.
So what would you bring?
Yeah,
I'm always triangular bandage is the first aid kit you need. Would you add anything to my triangular bandage?
I don't carry triangular bandage.
What?
You can always make a shirt work, or you can grab like a pair of pants, or
right.
You can always improvise with that. That's something I think you have redundancies already in your pack. But for me, the big one is some way to clean yourself. So whether it's like those antiseptic towelettes, like if you get a cut or a scrape or something like that, definitely something to clean them out. And I usually just carry couple gauzes, couple Band-Aids, couple safety pins for picking up slivers or something, or a safety pin. And then I'll also carry a little bit of crazy glue, like one of those mini tubes of crazy glue. So if you do get some blisters, crazy glue works really well for keeping that skin on around the blister, right? Because I've had putting the moleskin and duct tape and stuff like that. It's great in theory, but as soon as you get sweaty, it just wears off. So crazy glue works really well for that. And I'll usually carry some ibuprofen, some Advil, and then some Imodium, just a couple tabs of Imodium and Gravol, and just in a little Ziploc bag, just in case something happens. It's it's a couple pills just to get you out, right?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense for sure. What is you may as well just say your business name too, so that we have that on the air here.
Which business name?
Your Arborist. Like if people are in the greater Brooklyn GTA or around Toronto and you need a tree taken down, Eric can come to your house and he can tell you stories and adventures, but then he can also take care of the trees the correct way. The correct way, yeah. And pruning and maintenance is a large part of what we do. And so my company name is Brooklyn Tree Care, and that's BROOKLIN, and then Tree Care. And we're a full service tree care company. Awesome. Well, Eric, thank you very much. Hopefully we can do an adventure here soon.
Sounds good. All right. Have
Later,
fun,
buddy.
Peter.
Bye.
Hey guys, before you go, we just wanted to have one quick word from our sponsor, Health IQ.
Health IQ is a life insurance company that helps the consummate athlete like you save money on your life insurance.
To find out more, you can check out healthiq.com/CAPOD. That's CAPOD for all the details and to take a free quiz. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Consummate Athlete Podcast. To check out all of the show notes for this show, go to consummateathlete.com, and to follow along with our various adventures on the social medias, you can check us out on Facebook at facebook.com/consummateathlete, or follow me, Molly Herford, at Molly J. Herford on Twitter and Instagram.
And I am at Peter Glassford on Twitter and Instagram.
And if you could do us a huge favor and rate and review the podcast over on iTunes, that helps us bring on more guests, get more episodes out, and do more cool stuff. So we would be forever grateful.
And if you're looking for coaching for endurance sport or just for health and wellness, you can check out smartathlete.ca. And for amazing outdoor content, you can check out theoutdooredit.com.
Aw, honey.
And that's theoutdooredit.com for Molly Herford's writing and all things outdoors.
All right. Thank you so much for listening, guys, and we'll see you next time.